Welcome to episode 108 of Rebirth Revolution. My name is Melissa Olson. Last week, I told you that one of the wonderful offerings I had enjoyed was Love on the Spectrum Season 2. It's on Netflix. I watched Season 1 and was already in love with most of the people on the show. I was and am very invested in their happiness. What really hit me this season was that we are watching people on the autism spectrum try to find love, and that this need is no different from anyone else. Their wishes and desires have been shaped by art in the culture, art that tells us what love is supposed to feel like and look like. They have a strong sense of what is supposed to be romantic, and that being romantic is what is required. Where the story differs is that they have not accepted the cultural norms of what they can and cannot say to another person, or how they are supposed to hide what it is that they are thinking and feeling. They say the things out loud that everyone on a date is wondering, but has accepted the conditioning that tells them it would be uncool to say it out loud. They ask for the affirmations that they need. They ask how the other person thinks and feels about them. And they do it every time that question crosses their mind. Since it is generally people on the spectrum dating others on the spectrum, nothing that is said or done is measured against the societal norms of what is perceived as being cool. What is uncomfortable to watch about this is that it becomes abundantly clear that we, the neurotypical ones in the bunch, are really jumping through so many hoops that were created by others. These hoops force us to hide our thoughts and feelings from one another. We have to do this to remain cool. We need to do that to remain desirable, which is supposed to be fueled by being mysterious. We have been trained to keep each other guessing. How much of neurotypical behavior is about hiding our true selves? How much of what is considered to be normal is dysfunctional at its core? We are taught that there are societal norms and expectations that we must follow, and many of these are supposed to be about keeping each other comfortable. But when we keep each other guessing because we can't reveal our true thoughts and feelings, we are putting up roadblocks to connection. Since the daters on the spectrum were straightforward with their thoughts and feelings, they weren't particularly upset when a match did not work out. I'm guessing that part of that is because no one was pretending to feel or think anything that they were not feeling or thinking. When those who are not on the spectrum interact in the dating world, there is nothing but pretending. The pretending leads each person to be forced to make up a story in their own mind about what is happening and what the other person is feeling. Those stories, when they don't play out, become a real source of pain. We are making artificial attachments and imagining artificial futures with people we know little to nothing about. What may have begun as a way to spare the feelings of others ends up being the misunderstanding that does real damage. Love on the Spectrum is a beautiful series about people who operate in ways that are different from what you may have observed in your life. They are wonderful people who are not to be pitied. They have figured out some things in life that the rest of us still struggle with. They see life through a different lens, one that is not clouded by generations of behavioral expectations that none of us can even explain at this point. They are bringing their truest selves to their encounters, which is rare indeed. Not many people are brave enough to do that. Another beautiful thing that is on display in Love on the Spectrum is the deep love each person has in some area of life, like the man who was all in on dinosaurs. In the neurotypical world, we are expected to be interested in many different things, and there is an appropriate age that is attached to any and all of our interests. In our cultural expectations, there is an age when you are supposed to put some interests away. This type of restriction is not recognized by people on the spectrum. They love what they love, and they go super deep into the subject matter. They are not hampered by needing to be up on everything that is circulating in the culture. They feel free to love what they love and stick to that. It's wild how in the culture we live in, we can be shamed about our interests, which of course keeps us from going deeply into them. By the time you could gather real knowledge about a topic, it is no longer cool to be interested in that, either because it is not age appropriate or the culture has moved on to another subject. We are way too controlled by external clues from the culture about what should interest us. We are too controlled about how deep we can go. Years ago, I worked in an IT setting with a man who was, in some ways, incompetent at his job as a computer programmer. He was always stumbling and bumbling and struggled to complete some of the necessary tasks to get his work done. He was a super nice guy. He just struggled with the simplest of tasks. Then I got the backstory. He had been a programmer in deeply complex scientific programming before he came to this particular job. He was excellent at what he did, but he got so deep into it that he had lost his ability to communicate. He lost the ability to talk. He went so deep into the code that he lost the ability to speak to other people. The story was that his wife had asked him to leave that job so he may return to being normal. He obliged. When I knew him, he could awkwardly communicate with others, but the work he was doing was so simple that it was difficult for him. I don't ever remember him being particularly happy. This story was from a time before we really knew much about autism. It wasn't part of the discussion. In retrospect, he must have been on the spectrum. It makes me sad to think that it was more important that he be seen as part of the so-called normal world than it was for him to take his special brain to the limits of where it would go. He was wired differently. He was capable of what few others could do, but there was a cost to that gift. At the time, it was thought that fitting in was more important than the full expression of his gifts. There is a big cost to being hyper-focused on what others expect of you. There is a big cost to fitting in. Being one in the crowd, one that others do not judge as being weird, always means tamping down the parts of you that are unique, the part of you that may be your greatest gift. It makes me wonder how many people keep their gifts and talents unmined because they know that the culture would label them as weird. The culture also tells us that we are not supposed to feel things too deeply or show them openly. In Love on the Spectrum, all sources of joy are full-body experiences. When the participants feel love or joy or deep connection to a subject matter, they are lit up in ways that we would feel too embarrassed to express in public. They are not limited in that way. They feel their feelings all the way. How much of what we feel is stifled so that we may fit in? How much do we feel the need to act cool and not show the joy we are feeling? And what kind of toll does stifling everything take on our bodies and minds? Over the course of all the generations of students in this Earth School, we have had people who were like everybody else and those who were not exactly like everyone else. Those who were not like everyone else had a different perception of what was going on. This used to be seen as a disability. This in-group, out-group dynamic led to those who were different being excluded and ostracized. But we are growing now. We are moving towards a world that is less limited in its thinking. We are moving towards a world in which we can see value in each and every person's strengths, weaknesses, and the lens through which they process this world. As Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used to create them. This, for me, illuminates why we need to turn our focus to the thinking of those who are considered to be the out group. They can see things that those in the in group cannot see. They didn't create the system, so they are more likely to find alternative ideas and solutions instead of being married to the way things have always been. This is why it is so important to observe and celebrate those who are seen as different. They, through operating differently, can help us see what we are doing that is no longer serving us. We don't need to make them normal. We need to see what they see so that we can understand all the ways that being normal is damaging to us all. They have much to teach us, and we have much to learn. Another bright spot this week was the release of the new Kelly Clarkson holiday album, When Christmas Comes Around. I am a huge fan of holiday music and a huge fan of Kelly Clarkson. Her first holiday album was an instant classic. This one is great too. There's one song on it that is on repeat play, the song Blessed. There's no way to listen to that song and not be moved, to not be grateful for your life. It makes me think of all the experiences that some just see as normal passages in the human experience, like having a family. It makes me think about how lucky I have been because I got to do those things. Those things didn't just happen. I didn't just survive them. I got to have those experiences. That was, and continues to be, a huge blessing. We are taught to be grateful for some of the special things in life, like great vacations, but we are not always reminded to be grateful for the everyday challenges and the work of being a human. We are taught to be grateful for special relationships, but not for every ounce of love that we have been blessed to receive. The parts of our lives that were tough were the parts in which we grew the most. That is a blessing. That is a greater blessing in the long run than sipping a pina colada on a beach somewhere, though I will never turn down a pina colada. We need to stay in touch with the reality that we are owed nothing in this life. No one has to love us. No one has to put up with us. Any amount of grace and love that we receive is a pure blessing. Any challenge that we are able to survive is a blessing. Waking up in the morning with the chance to do it again and do it better is a blessing. We need to always be grateful for all of it. We are heading into the season where we focus more on our gratitude for our blessings and are given the opportunities to share that feeling and reciprocate the love more so than any other time in the year. What a perfect time to focus on how blessed we are. Thanks for returning for another week of Rebirth Revolution. You're always welcome here. Let's keep looking for the bright spots in the world around us. I know that the news is not always sunny, but we can still choose to focus on what is going right. We can put our considerable powers behind what is good and what is moving us all forward. We don't have to focus on those who are intent on dragging us backwards. You can always let me know how you're doing by emailing rebirthrev@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Rebirth Revolution can be found on all the podcast apps, the music apps, and full episodes can be found on YouTube and our Facebook page. I really appreciate everyone who downloads the podcast from all of the places, some that I've been to, some I can't wait to see. Thanks to each and every one of you. Until next week, seek out content about people who are not just like you. Figure out what they know that you don't. Get vaccinated if you haven't already and wear a mask. And keep seeking out light. Remember, you are loved exactly as much as every other person on the planet, not 1 ounce more or 1 ounce less. Stay strong and safe and open to all the delightful differences.